This is the Big Fish Cares Podcast. Big Fish Cares Podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
Did you know the construction industry has the highest suicide rate? That's an amazing thing I didn't know about until I met Mandy McIntyre, owner of Level Up Consultants. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was, when I read that, I was like, wow, you would never think that because we always think in construction, oh, don't fall off the roof, don't fall off the roof, don't fall off the roof.
Yep.
Tell me about that. What does that stem from?
So I did a little research after I had a foreman that was in substance use recovery, and he ended up going missing, and he died from an overdose. And so there was a lot of mental health issues within the company I was working for at the time, which was a roofing contractor. And so I wanted to start instituting mental health awareness, mental health toolbox talks, that type of thing. And so I started doing research. And when I saw these statistics about construction and saw that it was the number one industry for suicide, I was like floored and shocked. And the more investigating I did, just the more stats that I found on just construction in general, high substance use rates, high alcohol use rates. And it just made me want to learn more and want to do something. Men are more likely to commit suicide to attempt suicide than women. And, you know, it's a male dominated industry. And there's so many contributing factors to why the statistics are what they are. One being the male dominated industry, one being it's a transitory workforce. It's a seasonal workforce, which can create stress. Another is stigma and fear. Men often don't like to talk about their feelings, especially in a company setting. And then there's stigma and fear from like the industry perspective, whereas leaders, managers, site superintendents, project managers, what have you, may notice a change in someone, but doesn't know how to address that person, or thinks that talking about suicide is going to push someone in that direction when it's the complete opposite. So a lot of different factors.
That's good to know.
Contribute. Yeah.
Repeat that. Let's repeat that again, because I would always be afraid to say that too, because I'm thinking like, we were talking a little bit before the show about things like I have to endure as a CEO of a company. And I would automatically think like, oh, like I can't say the S word because then I'm gonna program it in their brain, right? Like, and I don't want to be responsible for it, but then I also don't want to be responsible for like not saying something. So how do I do it?
Yeah, so that's like the biggest myth. So like, okay, Mythbuster going on right here. Like talking to someone about suicide is not going to push them in that direction. In fact, it's the opposite. The research shows that the more you talk about it, the more likely someone is to get help. And the earlier you talk about it, then obviously the same as like a physical ailment. You know, if you broke your leg, if you didn't do anything, it could get infected. You may never walk right again. So same with if you see someone talk, you know, you're seeing signs or symptoms, or you hear somebody talk about giving away things or that they're hopeless and things like that, you want to address it head on. And you can't be afraid to like have that direct, courageous conversation, if you will, that could potentially save someone's life.
What's the employer's responsibility in a situation like that? So let's say I see somebody, they have some of those signs and I'm aware of it. And again, being aware of it's the hard part, right? Because if you're like just like running the rat race just along with them, sometimes you're not like you're oblivious, right? To like, you know, to like actually being aware. But let's just say you are. Like, where is the line of like checking in on someone on a personal level? And then like, do I provide the help? And like, who do I call? Like, do I say, hey, you should probably go see a therapist? Like, what does that mean? Like, how does that happen, or how does that work?
So I believe it is an employer's responsibility to maintain the overall safety, health, and wellness of your employees, right? Because if you want someone to perform well, they obviously have to be well, and that includes mental health. So if you, the saying, if you see something, say something. And that's what leaders, owners, managers need to do, because, you work with people, you see them sometimes more than your family. You know what these people, what their normal state of being is. So when you notice these changes, it's important to address it in a non-confrontational way. And when I say that, I mean like, as opposed to saying like, you've been late, you're doing this, you're doing that, saying something like, I notice these changes. I've noticed you've been showing up late. I noticed you haven't been acting yourself. I noticed you've been saying things and doing things that just isn't you. Would you like to talk about it? And if they do, that's great. Then you can offer some resources, maybe, know what your healthcare policy is for the company. Different resources like 988, which is the suicide and mental health crisis hotline. They have live counselors. It just rolled out last summer. The goal is to be as synonymous as 911 when it comes to a mental health challenge or crisis. So yes, if you want, engaged, healthy employees, these are things we have to address and talk about.
I actually just told one of my top people in my company, the guy that runs my company, actually, I said, I think like by the time we get to a certain level, we have to figure out to put a role in. Have you ever seen the movie or the TV show Billions?
No.
It's like a New York City district attorney versus Wall Street type of thing. And like this Wall Street company, big $1 billion hedge fund. They got this girl that works in the office, and her only job, she's almost like a therapist for all the hotshot stockbrokers and the CEO. And she talks everyone off ledges, and like, she like pumps them up. She like knows what's going on in the business. It's almost like the business therapist. And I'm telling you, I have a feeling that over the next 20 years, like that's going to be a staple in every company, because I think mental health is going to be, it already is like the biggest thing out there right now. But like the first, 20 years of like 2000 to 2020 was all about like, hey, fad diets and physical fitness and this and that.
Yeah.
I honestly think 2020, because I really think COVID's that marker.
Oh, yeah.
Like to 2040, it's going to be all mental health, because I'm starting to see more guys starting to talk about their feelings, some of the innovators in the space, and like the people that I know that are getting the help, and then they're starting to be okay with it, and then now it's going to trickle down, right? Because eventually, like, people are going to be talking about it, and they're already making stuff on YouTube. I see stuff all the time about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like as an employer, like, yeah, there's going to be a job. Like, is there a role called industrial organizational expert or something like that?
Industrial organizational psychology.
Psychology,
yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm talking to my therapist about it. I told her, I said, you'd be great at like in the corporate world, because I feel like the lines aren't as strict. I feel like in the medical field, like there's a lot of rules and restrictions and laws and like, but like I feel like when you get to the corporate level, there's not quite as much. I feel like you can get a little bit more. It's, if you're there for work, it's like, hey, I'm not going to share this if you don't want me to, but if it's something serious, I got to go talk to the boss about it. Like it's like, this is why we're here, like we're all here to get better. Right. And I think there's a lot of employees too that struggle at home. Like, so, and I have a small business, you have a small business, you've been around small businesses because you've been in the roofing industry now. You were even a contractor, right? Like,
yeah, I worked for a contractor for about 10 years, and worked my way up to vice president. So I've been through it all.
Yeah. So you've seen all the different things that happen, right? Well, there's a lot of people that need help, not even like at work with performance. Like, you can just tell their home life's a little screwed up because, like, you just can tell, right? And you're like, then that's affecting their work performance. Like, it goes hand in hand, right? Like, I know when I'm feeling good at home, I'm working more and I'm working better. And when I'm miserable at home, I don't even want to work. You know what I mean? So it's like, I know that. So like, it's got to be happening to them. So how do we open up that dialogue? Where's the line between the employer, like, getting too personal?
Mm-hmm. So I think, there's a difference between like prying into someone's personal life and showing genuine concern. So I think if, as an employer, showing genuine concern for someone's overall safety and well-being, that is, not crossing any lines. You're making sure that your team is good, right? And then showing that you care, that gets so much engagement and buy-in from an employee, because you're showing them support. You're showing them that, you see them beyond just the worker, if you will.
A number.
And you're seeing, you're seeing them, for them as a human being, and, on a basic human level, we want people to care about us, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially our employer. We want to know that we matter. So I think if it comes from a genuine sense of caring and well-being, then how could you not be doing the right thing,
Yeah. I think you're spot on with that. So I'm still fascinated with the fact that there's more drug overdoses or suicides. And do we count drug overdoses as suicides, or is that separate? How do you determine, how do we determine that?
They're separate statistics.
Oh, okay.
Overdose and suicide are separate statistics.
Well, falls and
the CDC.
Workplace injuries, getting your finger cut off, or dying, by falling, the drug overdose and suicides are higher than that.
Yeah. So,
but it's not necessarily a workplace thing, though, right? It could be a personal thing, right? Or you say they die at work? Is that when the stat gets counted?
No. Well, so from the CDC, the stat is that more construction workers die from suicide and overdose each year than every other workplace-related fatality combined. Wow. So it's taking the statistics of suicide and overdose and knowing what industry a person worked in. So it's not necessarily that they're dying on the job site, but it's that it's people from a specific industry have these higher rates. And in roofing, in construction, safety is so prevalent, right? Do you have your fall protection? Do you have all your PPE? All of that. But I always say it takes more than a hard hat to keep a head safe. And mental health is like the silent safety hazard. It's not something you necessarily see, but it's things that people are experiencing, and it's affecting our workplace environments. Because like you said, if you're not having a good home life, or you're going through something, you're not going to be as engaged and productive at work. So tackling these issues head on from a workplace environment just makes your employees better, both personally and professionally.
So here's an interesting question I have for you. It's the chicken or the egg. Do you think it's do you think it's construction that makes you drive to drugs and suicide, or do you think the people were already kind of messed up and the only home that they could find was in construction?
It's it's so funny. I got asked that exact question today, and exactly, and it was the chicken or the egg, to a T. So I think it's both. I really don't think it's one or the other. I think that sometimes people go into the trades because they feel that they can't do anything else, or it's something that, that's what their dad did, or that's what their cousin did, or whatever it may be. So I think it's part of who's in the trades. But then I think it's the culture of the trades too, where it is this man up approach. It's this stigma and fear to talk about your feelings. It's feeling that these are things you can just shake off and get over. And the substance use and the alcohol, it's a coping mechanism, right? So if you're tackling the core of the issue, which may be, depression, anxiety, trauma, something like that, then the chances of recovery are higher. And then our industry, it's a high pressure industry. With roofing, we often forget that the human element of the roofing machine is people. And oftentimes the crews are, out of town, or we don't see them. And so we don't really know what's going on, or we're not really thinking of checking in to be like, hey, how's everyone doing? And actually meaning that.
Oh, they're all partying. They're all drunk at the hotel after work. That's where they're at. I mean, right? Like at the end of the day, like when you're talking about that, because I mean, my uncle's a commercial roofer, so like I've been, around commercial roofers my whole life, right? And he was always out of town, and I heard stories and stuff like that. And again, it's it's kind of like that old school culture. I don't know if it's still like that as much. I'm sure it is a little bit. I think it's going the better way now. I can tell. As people just get more educated about everything. But back in the old days, man, like I'm going to tell you something. I did a government prevailing job. I was 18 years. I was actually technically 17. He brought me over here. It was after I graduated high school. I was still 17. I didn't turn 18 until the following September, but I wanted a job, and it was like paying like prevailing rate was like $20 an hour. I would get off the roof. I don't even know how he got that to happen. But anyway, I got off the roof. It would be like 4 o'clock in the morning because it was a night job. And all these guys are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, man. I'm just like this kid, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm supposed to drive back to my uncle's house because I was living with him, spend the night during the summer because this was in Pittsburgh and I was from Ohio. And these guys would they had their coolers of beer, like ready to go. Like they had packed it with them and they would sit in the parking lot. We weren't even out of town. These guys all could have drove home like a half hour. And like they brought their cooler of beer with them to work. Mm-hmm. So that way when they got off the roof, and we were in the FBI Federal Marshal. This was the Federal Marshal's building. We were in a parking lot and everybody just cracking beers, telling stories. And I'm a 17-year-old kid and I'm like, wow. And again, I grew up a strong Christian. We're not allowed to drink. We're not allowed to smoke. And I just sat there and just watched and talked, and I didn't participate, but I was really curious of like everything that was going on. And I'm just thinking like, that's happening. Like, that's happening, probably not as much anymore, but like that used to happen. Right. And that culture just keeps getting passed down. And if you have a son and he gets into it, it's just like, it's systematic. Right.
Yeah. And I think it's like a generational thing too. I grew up, my parents owned a small general contracting company. So like I've been around the trades my whole life and I saw it. My grandpa was an electrician. He would come home from work, drink and gamble. That's what he would do. Play poker till 2 a.m. And so
get up and do it again.
Yeah. And so I think it's a cultural thing and the culture of the trades. And I do think it's like starting to ease up a little bit, but I think it's just that there's a mentality. Mm-hmm. I think we all equate construction to drinking, and I almost feel like it's just something that people think, well, that just kind of, that's what it is. So it's changing that culture and doing a cultural shift when it comes to that and teaching people other coping mechanisms, teaching people about work-life balance, how to manage stress, in a healthy way, that type of thing.
I will say, I don't think I've ever shared my full story on my podcast because I'm always the one interviewing people, but here's a little snippet. I got fired from a couple corporate jobs, right? Because I didn't go to college, but I wanted to be somebody. So I tried to get jobs at GE, Verizon. Got fired a couple of times. I was like, man, this sucks. Ended up selling drugs, ended up getting in trouble, got a felony. And I'm like, oh, now my life's over because I can't get a job anywhere. Well, guess who picked me up? My uncle, the roofing contractor, says, hey, come to Pittsburgh for real now. You can help me with sales and marketing. We don't need you on a roof. I need somebody to help me with sales. I'm like, all right, cool, sign up, right? Because I didn't want to do the hard work of roofing because that's that's really hard, right? Like it's hard work. And I didn't want to get dirty. And, my mom says I have dishpan hands and stuff like that. And so that's how I got my shot, man. Like I would have never, who's going to, back then, like they want to see resumes. They want to see that you have a college degree. And then, then they do background checks and it's like, man, so like, I think that like it is a combination of both, right? Because it drives, because like they have to give people shots because it's hard enough to get people to want to work in that industry anyway.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a little bit of both. And then when you have people from that background that go in there and then they, they're not usually stopping each other from like, it's not like somebody says, oh, hey, we don't do that here. It's usually like, oh, hey, it just keeps snowballing. Right.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, it's an interesting, I never just thought about that. And again, like I just never thought about that, but yeah, guys get stressed out. There's too much pressure at home. Everybody wants to make more money. You're not doing good enough. And then you do have those bad habits, right? Drinking and gambling and all these addictions that come with trying to cope with your mental health cost money, right? It's not like, like I feel like a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to mischaracterize, but feminine energy and females sometimes they have bitterness and anger and like they don't necessarily always go to the bottle, right? Like they like have this other way to handle it, right? And it's not as expensive. It doesn't seem like it doesn't cost as much money, and it's like so for men like gambling like is unlimited. I mean, you could like literally lose your whole paycheck in like one day, And, and then it's just a circle, right? And it's hard to get out of that. It's hard to get out of there, right?
It is a vicious cycle, and I think that's where like employers really are important to, so there's a labor shortage. And so there's many construction companies, roofing companies that will hire anybody, hire a body, if you will. But a lot of times, like you said, they're second chance employers, or there's somebody who was in recovery and they're looking for a job because they lost their job or whatever. And the trades has always been an option for anybody. But the problem is that the construction and roofing industry has not evolved enough with the times to offer solid tools and resources for people to stay healthy.
Can I tell you why?
Yeah.
I have two reasons why. First of all, most construction companies are owned by people that were in construction, so they don't know any better. Second of all, the consumer wants everything cheaper. And so like they don't want to pay more for the roofer that's doing everything the right way, that's investing in their people. I mean, I deal with this in my market, like I'm like $3,000 higher than every other roofer because I'm doing all these benefits. I'm doing these culture events. Like it's hard to like sell that on a sheet of paper sometimes. I mean, we could tell people that and they can tell by the difference of our people. But at the end of the day, like right now we're going into a recession. If and I'm dealing with like, a retired person down the street that's on a fixed income, they don't have a choice. So then they have to go buy it off the cheap guy, and then the cheap like just keeps it's a race to the bottom. So so I don't even blame the employer. Sometimes I blame the consumer because like the consumer is the one that like allows it. They allow it.
Yeah.
How do you like that one?
I love that one.
It's an interesting take.
It is. I mean, everything comes down to money most often. And I mean,
that's why we're programmed that way, though.
Yeah. As
kids, like we're programmed money. There's not enough. It's like most of us grow up in a world that like there's never enough money. We always want more than like what we, so it's like as a young child when you're getting developed. And I want to talk about this when you talk about mental health, because I think it all comes back to the childhood anyway.
Oh yeah. Trauma in childhood plays a huge role in, your mental health and how you were raised to cope with it. Were you in an environment where you were just told to suck it up and move on, which, generationally, that's what most people heard, until this like millennial Gen Z, whole different ball game with them. And that's the next wave of talent coming in, and they want to talk about their feelings. They expect, mental health days, things like that. So, and it's true. And so, the roofing and construction industry has to evolve with the times, and that's just what it is, especially post-pandemic. I mean, that brought mental health to the forefront, I think, for everybody.
Well, because we couldn't just avoid. We couldn't run. There was no flight. There was just fight. There was no flight. You can't run from your problems and go to work. Most successful people, I'm telling you, I know the most successful people in the world. Most of them are miserable at home because like the success is because they have to they just work more to avoid dealing with feelings and confrontations and family but that's the bright side for them is like they can be put on a pedestal, man. They're like the best, I mean, I know good people, like they're actually got good people with good hearts. They're not like, necessarily terrible human beings that are doing like bad things, like criminal stuff, but like they don't know how to talk about their feelings, and then they just go to work because it's just It's actually easier to go to work and be a hardworking roofer, tearing off layers and layers of roof, getting pitch all over your face, getting burnt. You know, the boys are telling you you're doing a good job. The owners be like, yeah, man, you ripped it silly, man. You're the best. Yeah. You're going home and the old lady's like, man, you didn't make me enough money. Like, I'm trying to buy, like, I get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like, how are we going to fix it all?
So that is
another podcast.
So, no, I mean, so what I did while I was with the roofing contractor, you know, I did a lot of research, and I found this mental health first aid training through the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. So I was like, you know, I'm going to take this course and see how I can apply it to my company to help everybody. And took the course, and it was like mind blowing. I loved it. So I took an instructor training course so that I could teach and certify people in mental health first aid. So then that was what kind of, you know, also prompted me to start my own business, because I was like, we have these horrible statistics. I know the industry. I have the network. There is a problem. It's not being talked about. I would love to, as cliched as this sounds, I want to make a difference, right? I mean, so I got the instructor training, and now what I do is I offer mental health first aid trainings specifically for roofing and construction companies to help identify, understand, respond to a mental health challenge or crisis, to offer mental health toolbox talks, to do lunch and learns, to do different things that just get the conversation going, to make it part of a company's culture that mental health is something that is valued just as much as your physical health. And it is a safety initiative. It really is.
I mean, I think it's wonderful. How's it going so far for you in that world? Because, I mean, you're trying to disrupt, it's got to be awkward trying to go into a roofer's office, be like, hey, would you be interested in some mental health CPR or, you know, mental health first aid? Like, they're probably like, who are you, lady? Get out.
No, you know what? Honestly, it's been going great. I had no idea what to expect. I just knew this was what I wanted to do. I was very passionate about it. I've seen it work because I did it at the roofing contractor that I was with. So I was like, you know what do I have to lose? If my business doesn't take off, I can find a job in roofing.
Yeah, you can
very easily.
You can run any roofing company. We'll all hire you right now.
So so that's what like got me over my fear, is that like, okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll get a job. I'll be able to find a job. So I think that safety net really helped push me, but I've really been amazed at how well received it's been and how so many people are interested in it. I don't want to say it's been easy, because it hasn't, but the reception with it is way better than I anticipated.
Well, and again, we're coming into it just like you said. You know, these companies, you know, I'm assuming you work with a little bit bigger companies. You know, and when you have a bigger company, you know, usually they're a little the guy at the top, the leadership team is a little wiser. Usually, you know, it's not like the old days as much anymore. So, and then when you get one of those people to buy into it and they go through it, then they tell their buddy that's at a conference, right? And I met you at a conference. That's where we met. So then it becomes like, you know, it's like word of mouth. And it's like, you know, you probably don't even have to market it that hard, right? Because like once you start to get the word going, man, how many people do you have? Is it just you, or do you have other?
So right now it's just me. There's a couple other consultants that I work with, but like I don't have any direct employees yet.
So you can only be at one roofing company every day. You're only one person. So like you could only help, let's just say 200 roofing companies a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, my goal is to get someone else on board that is certified and that can do these trainings. But for right now, it's just me doing it. You know, going all across the country, doing virtual trainings, doing on-site trainings. And I love it. I absolutely love it. So
I can tell you beam every time you talk about it. So
thanks.
You're definitely making a difference, and I think that it's a strong impact. Now, when you told me they're like, what do I got to lose? I think for all entrepreneurs, because I do a lot of talks with entrepreneurs because it seems like that's like where all my friends are now these days. Mm-hmm. And they all have cool stories, and most of them, just like start, right? There's very few that were high level, employees that all of a sudden like take the jump. But I love what you said. You're like, and I tell this to everybody all the time, even people who are looking for another job. I'm like, you can always go back to doing what you were doing before if you were good. If you were good, you can always go back to do, like, they will take you back right now. And there's something else that I think that you put in your notes for the show. It's like, there's not only is there a labor shortage, there's a leadership shortage. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so now there's one less leader in our, you're in the industry as like a vendor helping the industry as a whole. But now, man, there's one less vice president at a roofing company. So like, we need more leaders in roofing companies because you can't get there without growth. I have a smaller residential roofing company, and I'm finding that that's now the biggest challenge. And I didn't see that coming 4 years ago. I have a lot of great people and a lot of great workers, and we're trying to turn them even into middle managers because we want them to have more responsibility. But just like me, I never had to manage anybody like at a level where I was holding people accountable, right? Like, oh, hey, you're going to get your job done. Cool. But holding people accountable to like time and materials and like checklists, and nobody knows how to do that. Like most actual construction workers don't actually want to do that.
Exactly.
So like, they're not even wired like that. And they'll tell you like, and they say they want it because they think it sounds better because, it might be a little bit money. But I've put some of them there and they're like, man, I don't like this office job. Like, and then they want to go back out. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, where am I going to find leaders at? Because now I got to try to pluck them. Almost, I call it trick. I got to trick them from other industries and say, come with me. Yeah. That's really hard because it's like, they're usually already, if you're a good leader, you're already got a cushy place somewhere. So like, how do we develop leaders inside of our own spaces?
I love that question. And I think there's a lot of people that own a roofing company or are in a management position of a roofing company that have been in the field, been on the roof, but they were never taught leadership skills. Mm-hmm. So managing a team and leading a team are two totally different things.
I agree.
And just getting a title of a manager or whatever the title may be does not equate leadership. It's something you have to work on. It's a skill. And so I think that companies just need to do leadership and communication training, because when you're managing things, okay? So you're making sure that the work order's set up. You're making sure the materials are there. You make sure you got your P&L, this and that. That's great. You're managing things. Leaders motivate, inspire, influence people. And that's a skill that some people just naturally have it, but most people don't, because they think in that managerial mindset, and they're just telling people what to do without telling them the why, without giving them the purpose, without offering the support, without pushing them, motivating them in the right direction. And then it's not one size fits all. Not everyone is going to respond the same way. So I've always said, like, leading people is the hardest thing, because you have to kind of cater to different personalities. People are going to respond differently to be fully motivated, fully engaged. So when I say there's a leadership shortage, that's what I'm talking about, is people are just telling people to do things without the guidance, support, and motivation to actually do it well.
Right. They're not taking all things into account.
Yeah.
And the first time I actually started, it all started to click with me, because I would have said, I was always a good salesman. I could always get at least one person, most people to take one person to kind of like do something. But then but it was only usually the people that were like me most of the time. I had a hard time like with other personalities. And then I found, what was it? I was in a small business group called Tab in Pittsburgh, and they brought somebody in and they said something about a DISC assessment. And I never knew what a DISC assessment was, and they made me take it. And when I took the DISC assessment to get into this small group of business owners, I was like, and they gave me it was like a 60-page report. And I was like, wow. And I read it. I was like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's, oh my gosh, they know me. I felt so loved. I was like, oh, look, this report's like hugging me. Yeah. And I was like, no one's ever spoke that well with me before. And then I started to understand it. And then I like found a trainer and an instructor. And I really like went, again, Ben Fisher style, like goes all in, right? Mm-hmm. And I like said, all right, get everybody in my company disc assessments. I want team building. I want to like, and it's so fun because when the facilitator comes in, because they're really trained in this stuff, right?
Yeah.
They can just look at the sheets and they know how to respond to people. And they can basically tell the person how they like to be talked to, how they like to be, how they talk to people. And then it starts to like, everyone starts to smile. Everybody starts to like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so cool. And it's like, then there's the skill of, all right, you and you know what you're good at. Now, if you can like figure out how others respond, and then you can figure out, because you know these people and you see their reports, and then, all right, can I go out in the streets now without a report? And by the way they're talking and responding, can I like kind of not label them, but like kind of label them? Like, are they a high I? Are they a high S? Are they a low C? Are they a high D or low D? Like, I'm pretty good now. Like, and it's pretty scary actually, because after a while, it's like I'm so much more influential now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because like I can now have a wider audience, because now I can get more people to like react, because I can change the way I respond.
Yes. And that's like the self-awareness aspect of leadership is critical. You need to know yourself before you can try to, lead a team. Being self-aware is like critical.
They call that emotional intelligence, right?
Yep. Emotional intelligence.
There's like there's like the social awareness and the self-awareness, right? Mm-hmm. The way you're perceived by yourself and the way others perceive you. Others
perceive you. Yeah. Yeah.
And my scores were really bad when I first took that test. I read a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Badberry.
Yeah.
Have you read that book?
I've read parts of it.
Yeah.
I can't say I read the full thing.
No, that's okay. So the book's cool for like entrepreneurs, because they're in really short, small sections, almost like, like little, like just, hey, if you struggle with this, just read like that. And like, you can get some help with it. But I took this assessment and I was like, I don't know, in the 60s, which I was like, I don't ever like to score in the 60s of anything, because like, I'm competitive. So I was like, man. And then as I started to read the book and I started to understand it, I started to do more of the seminars. I started to bring this lady in to do more. Like every quarter I was bringing her in to do these team building things for like 2 or 3 hours. And I just was soaking it up like a sponge, right? And again, I have the ability to like learn a little bit more, because again, I don't have to like work every day like so hard like everybody else is.
Yeah.
But because they're doing that, I have a chance to learn these skills. And then I'm trying to pass these down, because like they're gifts. Like, and I'm trying to tell everybody about them. And it's like, I just want everybody to slow down for a little bit just so they can understand this. Because if they do, man, they're going to be such a better human being. But I raised my score after 3 years of like over 3 years. Like I'm in like the high 80s, low 90s now.
Nice.
And I'm like, wow, that really works. And now people even come up to me and they're like, wow, you're so different. It's like, you're not different. You still have the same personality, but like you're different. Like, I'm like, because I'm trying. That's why, because like I'm aware.
Right.
It's all about awareness. Yeah, no, it's really cool. I strongly recommend it. If anybody's like listening, I think emotional intelligence is the only score that matters. I'd rather have someone with a high EQ than a high IQ. Like any day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you can respond and to react to situations, because I think, especially customer service is all like, how do you react to the customer internally with your other employees, right? How are you going to respond? Yeah. And that's really all that matters, because that's what people remember.
Well, exactly. People remember how you made them feel. And a lot of times, it's an initial reaction, and it's taking that time to pause and respond to something versus just spewing, you know what I mean? Because that's not going to motivate someone to want to do better.
I still struggle with one section of people.
What's that?
And I actually struggle with the people that are almost just like me now with emotional intelligence. Where before I thought like those are the only people that I could rap with. Now it's like sometimes I let my guard down and I can get more like reactionary and like dominant. Like if I'm dealing with another high D and like they're a high D, it's usually a bad situation because it's like a competitive thing to like we're over talking each other and we're trying to like get our statements in and we're trying to like, so I'm still struggling with that. But luckily, most of the high Ds are usually other entrepreneurs, and it worked at the workplace. It's like it's much easier for me now. It's just when I'm in more settings with my buddies that are other entrepreneurs that I'm finding that like, and again, so it's more on the personal friendship side that like I struggle, even with my like family sometimes because they're wired like me a little bit, and like I'm still working on that a little bit. So my EQ with like my family's probably a little lower, but that'll be an interesting study if they ever do that. What do you do assessments like with the work that you do? Like, do you like deal with any of that type of stuff?
I don't offer DISC assessments. I know that there's people that specialize in that. What I do more is company culture assessments, where it's like anonymous company culture surveys, getting a feel for what a company stands for and is. I do like different leadership trainings. So it's not so much personality tests. It's more of just training and teaching people leadership qualities and what leadership isn't and what it is, so that people can like really see black and white, like this is not a good leader, this is a good leader, things that you can like remember easily, what I mean?
Can you give it to us in like 5 minutes? Can you give me like what leaders isn't and like what leaders are?
So okay, so like a leader, one of the biggest thing is a leader isn't a manager. A manager manages things. A leader inspires, motivates, influences people. So that's like one of my biggest things is that people in a leadership position treat people like things, and you're not going to get someone's full engagement treating a person like a thing. Another thing is offering purpose in the why for everything that somebody does. When a worker or an employee knows the why for what they're doing, they are more prone to be better engaged in the task because they know the goal and the purpose behind it. So like if you're just given an open-ended task without knowing the importance of it, you're not going to be as engaged. So like, like even something like, a roof repair. Okay, go. It's an EPDM roof. Go patch this corner over here. But then telling them why we need to, like, okay, when it's a heavy directional rain, we have a more severe leak. Right underneath it is a nursing care facility, and it's coming on someone's bed. You know what I mean? Like those little details, the why helps someone go above and beyond.
Tie it to an emotion.
Yes, exactly. That's the motivation.
Sales 101.
Yeah. So it's like
cool.
We have to do that same thing with our employees. I always say like recruiting is sales because it really is. Mm-hmm. It's the same tactics. So it's applying. Any good salesperson can apply those same tactics to leading. But
most of us only want to do it once, and we don't want to do it over and over.
I know, but you have to. Again. You have to. And it's like the other thing another thing I say is like an ego system versus an ecosystem with leadership.
Like that.
Yeah. Thank you. So often leaders sometimes have an inflated ego. Okay. That's self-awareness. And it's
very kind of you the way you said that, by the way. You're like very nice and often.
Oh. And it's like the me versus we mentality. So saying like, I need you to do this, versus saying, we have this issue. This is what we need to do. So this is our plan of attack. Making people feel that they're a part of something versus just dictating.
Yeah, I struggled with that early on in my entrepreneurial journey because, again, my whole life, it was all about me. When you're a sales guy and you're just an individual and you're just like trying to go out there and grind for yourself, it's like, it's like, oh. And then when I'll never forget, and sometimes I still slip up. I always will tell them, well, I did this my first year and by myself, and I didn't need any of these people. And I'm like, and now we got all these people, and like it's still like what's going on? That's like, because I did this and I did that. And I'm like, that's terrible, Ben Fisher. Why are you saying that? Like that is not going to get us anywhere. And sometimes it's like, but how do we break that? Like, is there like, can I go to like, can you send entrepreneurs to like a 30-day, like a retreat or something, like a boot camp and like knock the ego out of all of us?
You know what? That is a great program development that I should start working on.
Let's go. We'll call it the Eco versus Ego boot camp, retreat, whatever you want to call it. The boot camp, they might not sell tickets to. Maybe a retreat you can sell tickets to.
Retreat, yeah.
Yeah, you got to trick them. You got to trick these entrepreneurs.
Oh, I know.
Eco versus Ego. That's so good. So here's another thing I want to chat with really quick, because like, you're a woman in the roofing industry, and for whatever reason, for like the last, I don't know, couple years, man, I've just seen like, I don't know what the growth plan looks like, but it just seems like women are taking over. Pretty soon guys will be the minority. Pretty soon guys will be the minority in the roofing industry.
Yeah. National Women in Roofing, I love that organization. I can 100% honestly say I would have never started my business had it not been for that community and that support, because it's like I already had a solid network. And it's so great because there's women from all over the country in all different aspects of roofing. And, women face unique challenges in the roofing industry. Let's just be honest. But it's such a great industry. And so our goal is to attract more women to this industry. And there's such a stigma attributed to roofing and construction. So we're trying to break that and dismantle that. And it's working.
It's working.
It really is. And National Women in Roofing, I mean, it is just, I love it. I love being a part of it. I'm the chair for the Cleveland Council. I'm on the DEI committee. I'm super involved. And it's just been amazing. So
I have 25 employees. I want to know how I'm doing. And I'm trying to think. I got Mallory, Lisa. I think I have 5 women, maybe 6.
Okay.
Five. So let's just say 5. 5 out of 25. Okay. So is that a good mix? Like, I mean, like, it's better than no women, right? Yeah. I just I'm curious, like, what the stats are of like, what's the, I don't know.
What? I don't have the statistics on that, but that would be an interesting.
That's the number we should track. Like the percentage of women in a company, we should just track that every year. National Women in Roofing should just be proud of that number, right?
Yeah.
As more women enter the workforce, because, and again, I don't mean I'm always afraid to talk about, because I don't know how to sometimes speak about like this stuff without offending anyone. So I don't want to say that I'm sexist or anything, because I'm not. But I'm finding that more women are more organized than most men. Maybe the data that comes in front of me. So like, we need more women because they're more organized and they can keep things rolling. They're actually better managers. They're probably better leaders. They are. I mean, we all need a mom. Like, yeah,
I hear that from so many men in the industry. Like, we need more women. They're more organized. Everything you just said. And for many years, I was a service manager. And I knew nothing about roofing when I started, but I learned. And I mean, I killed it in the service department because I loved making sure my numbers were set and having high profit margins and keeping my guys, on track and being that mother figure and all of it. So I think women are great in the roofing industry because, they have the capability, but they also have that emotional element.
Well, that
and
talk about feelings. And like there's that softer side, right? And then guys can let their guard down a little bit, right? As long as it doesn't go too far.
Yeah. I mean,
so like that's why it gets complicated, right? Like it's definitely I definitely love to see what you guys are doing. How many people are in this org? Do you guys? It's like an organization, right? Is it like a?
Yes.
Is it like a nonprofit, or is it like
it is a nonprofit? Yeah, there's a lot of industry support. Most of the big manufacturers are sponsors. I want to say there's over 2,000 women now. I don't know the exact number offhand.
How do you become a member?
Oh, so you go to nationalwomenandroofing.org and you can sign up. Men are more than welcome to join. There's many men that are members of National Women in Roofing. So, Benny, I expect to see your membership on the list soon.
Is it an individual thing or a company thing?
Individual.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How's it work? You just pay a fee and like you're in?
Mm-hmm. It's a one-time or once-a-year membership fee. And there's great educational resources, networking opportunities, just mentoring opportunities. There's all kinds of great webinars. I mean, I could go on and on. I love it. I love it.
Well, I think it's great too, because, we were talking before the show. It's like most, guys, we don't know how to deal with girl stuff, right? I'm very not good at that, right? Because I've just never been trained. Nobody's I don't know. I have a daughter now, so I'm going to learn. Eventually.
Congratulations again.
Thank
by the
you.
way.
I'm going to learn, eventually. But I got 20 years of education that I got to do. But it'd be nice to be able to hey, if I have an issue, call somebody up that's maybe in the women industry and roofing, and just be able to say, hey, I got this situation. Here's what it's like. Feelings are involved. I don't know how to handle it. What do you suggest? And or because there's probably some companies where you might be the only woman in the whole company, right? So then it gets a little lonely, I bet, and it's you maybe need to talk to other women to say, hey, what do I do? This, these guys are doing this. I'm not really sure what to do. How do I handle this? Right. And so, I think we're all going to have to learn together.
That's, it's great for that, to answer those questions and navigate those situations.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like it. Because you guys have events too and stuff, right?
Oh yeah. We have National Women in Roofing Day. It is the Sunday before the IRE every year. Last year, we actually added a second day, the Monday before the IRE. So we'll be doing that again this year, National Women in Roofing Day 1 and Day 2. And
guys can come to that.
Yes.
I haven't booked my plane ticket to Dallas. I am going to the IRE, but I haven't booked my plane ticket. I did book the hotel, but I just have to get a couple more days now.
Yeah, no.
It's going to be a long time down there. The IRE's 3 days, Women in Roofing's 2 days. Holy cow. I like to leave the IRE after about a day and a half anyway, because it's the same thing over and over again. Hopefully nobody's listening from the IRE. You can only go to so many conferences and do so many things, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you with that. But yeah, no, men are welcome. The only thing that we ask that when men attend our events is that you go there to learn. You don't go there to
steal the show
or preach or something steal the show.
I gotcha. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Stay very humble, hide in the back of the room, wait for girls to approach you. And then and then just be oh yeah, I feel like it's gotta be intimidating enough for men. So I listen, I want to be scared at my first event. So
no,
because you guys are the movers and shakers.
Oh, we are.
I know you are. I've been around some of you. You guys are moving and shaking. So I mean,
we're trying.
It could be a little intimidating, at first, until you get in there and nobody bites. It's it's good.
No,
it's no one's going to bark, and it's.
No, and that's one of the things I really want to emphasize is it's not this group where we just get together and man bash. You know
it's
what
not
I mean?
It's not like the male version of the country club, right? It's not.
No, it's not. It's there to empower women, to train women, to get more people into our industry that are women. And so it's not some man bashing event. It's just an empowering event to help our women in our industry be even better than they already are.
Well, that's cool. How can I help?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So Joe, you can join.
Yeah, I'll join.
Being part of the organization.
That's the easiest part, though.
That is the easiest part.
But then after that, what do you guys need? What kind of initiatives are you guys trying to do? Because
Yeah. So right now we just rolled out a program, a diversity, equity, and inclusion program called Real Roofing. And that's at realroofing.org. And what it is, it's a DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically for the roofing industry. So what it does is it helps contractors, manufacturers, suppliers, whatever you may be in, understand these concepts, how they apply to roofing, why it's important, and how it can help elevate your business from a profitability aspect, from a productivity aspect, from a recruiting and retention aspect. And that's something that's, not really addressed in roofing. So it's something new that we're trying to do. But again, like with mental health, like these are things other industries are embracing, but the roofing industry hasn't gotten to that level yet. And we're trying to get it to that level.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate all the work you're doing. I appreciate your time today. This is cool. I've had a couple women in roofing actually on my podcast. I've had Elizabeth Lytle from Contractor Dynamics.
Okay.
I've had Jen Silver from Roofing Utah, and I'm trying to think if I had anybody else. No, I have you. I have Brittany Laws coming on, who works with Heather Hitchcock down in Houston. I'm trying to think, but I plan on having more because this is fun. And I'm a big Jill Bloom fan. I'm assuming she's in women in roofing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
Good deal. So every podcast, I ask my guests 5 questions. So imagine yourself that I have to send you away. You're never going to see people ever again. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're going to be like on an island of some sort. And you have to take one book with you. What book are you going to take with you?
Ooh, that is a good one. I would say The Alchemist.
The Alchemist.
By Paulo Coelho.
All right. You're allowed to take one movie with you.
Step Brothers.
I
need some comic relief.
Yeah, because you can just watch it over and over and over and over again, right? Yeah. What restaurant are you going to put on the island? It could be something like, that people know. It could be one in your backyard.
It would be some type of pizzeria for sure.
What's your favorite one?
My favorite pizza, I would say, is it's Papa Nick's in Cleveland on Clinton.
All right.
Clifton, rather. It's so good.
I've never been there. I'm a Luigi's fan, like in Akron.
Oh, okay. I've never had that.
Yeah. And then, all right, so that's 1, 2. All right. You're allowed to go anywhere you want for a whole week. So where are you going to
go? Lake Como, Italy.
Lake Como, Italy. I've had a bunch of people say Italy, so that's good. All right, and this is the most important one. You can spend 24 hours with one person, past, present, famous, not famous. Who do you want to spend 24 hours with?
Oh, you're really getting to my emotions. It would definitely be my mom because she passed away 14 years ago. Aww. So, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get to go dive deep in your personal life. Usually on this show, we uncover like the personal life, but you had so much good information. But I wanted people to hear that. Maybe we'll have you back on, and we'll talk more about Mandy the person instead of Mandy.
Oh gosh, okay.
What she's doing, because I bet you have a good story. Because I can tell you have a great heart. So.
Oh, thank you.
What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Best way would be my website, which is www.levelup-consultants.com, or I'm on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. Mandy McIntyre. On LinkedIn, or email me mmcintyre@levelup-consultants.com.
And we'll have all that in the show notes. So I really appreciate it. If you guys got any value out of this podcast, subscribe, put some comments in there. If you have any questions in there, I'll make sure Mandy sees them. And we'll see you again on another edition of the Big Fish Cares podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.